All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're unpacking this incredible paradox that's completely defining Amazon in 2026. On one hand, you've got a company absolutely hurtling toward an AI-driven future with unprecedented momentum. But on the other, they're getting dragged into these intense, ground-level regulatory and labor battles. It's this fascinating clash, really, dizzying technological innovation colliding right into immovable human and legal realities. To make sense of all this tension, we've broken this explainer down into 5 quick parts. We'll cover the $200 billion AI bet, the innovation flywheel, the labor union battleground, the antitrust showdown, and finally, the ultimate balancing act.
So let's kick things off with part one, the $200 billion AI bet, or what we're calling the irresistible force.
Just look at this number, $200 billion. Let that sink in for a second. In late 2025, CEO Andy Jassy announced this staggering capital expenditure plan for fiscal year 2026. And honestly, this is a massive pivot for the company. After a period of cost trimming and workforce reductions, Amazon is now deploying capital at historic levels. They're scooping up physical land, locking down massive power capacity contracts, and buying up AI silicon specifically for Amazon Web Services, or AWS. Jassy literally views this generative AI wave as a once-in-a-generational shift, kind of like the original creation of the cloud itself. But why spend that much? Well, you have to look at the massive demand side of the equation. Get this. OpenAI made a commitment of over $100 billion to run its core workloads directly on AWS networks. That is a gargantuan anchor contract, and it quickly pushed the AWS AI division to a $15 billion annualized revenue run rate by early 2026. To really put that into perspective, this AI division is growing 260 times faster than the core AWS business did at the exact same stage of its development. That's just wild. And this massive spend really reveals their underlying strategy. By vertically integrating custom AI chips, specifically we're talking about their proprietary Intrainium and inferential lines, Amazon is generating over $20 billion in annualized run rate just from that custom silicon. But the real kicker here is that these proprietary servers give them a huge operating margin advantage over third-party alternatives. It essentially builds a protective wall around Amazon against global supply chain bottlenecks, all while setting up this highly profitable AI backbone. Which brings us right to part 2, the innovation flywheel, and how exactly they are funding the future. So how does a retail and cloud company structurally afford to dump $200 billion into the future? Well, take a look at this. This is Jeff Bezos' original, famous, hand-drawn flywheel. This little sketch basically demonstrates the entire core operating philosophy of the company. It's a self-reinforcing loop. Lowering your cost structure lets you offer lower prices. Those lower prices plus a massive selection of goods create a great customer experience. That great experience drives huge organic traffic, which brings in third-party sellers, expanding the selection even more, and boom, the growth just fuels itself. And as they scale up, those fixed costs just keep dropping. But the absolute financial magic here is how that massive growth is actually funded. Amazon maintains what's called a negative cash conversion cycle. Basically, they turn their inventory over so unbelievably fast that they actually collect your payment at the checkout before they ever have to pay their own suppliers. It's structural magic. It allows them to operate with negative working capital, systematically taking those operating cash flows and plowing them straight back into massive infrastructure projects without having to rely heavily on outside money. The math behind this flywheel is completely undeniable. I mean, it propelled Amazon to a $2 trillion market cap. But we really have to ask, what happens when the relentless, scaled momentum of this massive corporate machine hits the immovable object of human and legal realities? That takes us to part 3, the labor union battleground and the ground-level friction they're facing. If we trace this timeline, you can see a very clear escalation in labor pressures. It all started back in April 2022, when workers at the Staten Island JFK facility successfully organized. Fast forward to June 2024, and they formally affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Then the critical milestone hit in April 2026. The National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, officially exhausted Amazon's administrative appeals. They issued a historic bargaining order, which legally forced Amazon to recognize the ALU-IBT Local 1 and sit down for formal contract negotiations. And at the same time, this friction sparked major nationwide policy changes. Following some coordinated holiday walkouts at more than 200 facilities across 20 states, an NLRB-mediated settlement was reached. See, during the strikes, Amazon had docked workers' unpaid time, or UPT balances, which is a big deal because that can actually trigger automatic termination. But under this new settlement, Amazon was required to restore all of those deducted UPT balances. Plus, they had to commit to a nationwide policy strictly prohibiting retaliation or UPT docking for striking workers across all 1,300 of its U.S. facilities. Now, let's move out of the warehouses and into Washington for Part 4, the Antitrust Showdown, where the FTC intervenes.
The company is facing incredibly intense legal pressure from regulators right now, and the most significant threat is definitely coming from the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC lawsuit, which is officially scheduled for a massive trial in October 2026, alleges that Amazon holds and abuses monopoly power. Their core legal claims really focus on three main areas. First, anti-discounting measures. They allege Amazon essentially punishes sellers who offer lower prices on other websites by suppressing their search visibility. Second is prime fulfillment tying, which means they're allegedly conditioning a product's prime eligibility on the seller using Amazon's own logistics. And third, monopoly rent extraction, where the FTC claims Amazon forces sellers to buy expensive search ads, replacing organic results with paid junk ads just to extract higher fees.
And even while that main anti-trial is still pending, this regulatory pressure is already carrying a very heavy financial cost. The newly restructured FTC recently secured a historic $2.5 billion settlement against Amazon. This was to resolve claims that the company used manipulative interface designs, what people often call dark patterns, to enroll tens of millions of consumers in recurring Prime subscriptions without their explicit consent, all while intentionally making it super complicated for them to cancel. All right, bringing it all together with Part 5, the ultimate balancing act, where these two realities collide. This right here is the absolute core tension of this explainer. On one hand, you have this irresistible force of Amazon's aggressive AI scaling, the sovereign AI push, the $200 billion capital expenditure. But on the exact opposite hand, you have the immovable objects. We're talking legally mandated union negotiations under the NLRB and strict federal antitrust trials that are actively seeking to dismantle core parts of that retail flywheel. When you just look at the sheer density of events on this 2026 timeline, the paradox becomes completely undeniable. Early 2026, they sign a $100 billion OpenAI deal to secure cloud dominance. Then in March, they're paying a $2.5 billion FTC settlement. By April, the NLRB forces their hand with the Teamsters. And then October, boom, the massive FTC antitrust trial begins. So we literally see Amazon locking in the historic future of AI at the exact same moment they are legally forced to alter their ground-level consumer and labor practices from the past. To truly grasp what's at stake here, we have to remember Amazon's entire cultural operating model. The whole thing is completely based on avoiding what Jeff Bezos famously called Day 2. As he put it, Day 2 is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that is why it is always Day 1. Day 1 is all about agility, rapid experimentation, and absolute customer obsession to keep that massive flywheel spinning freely. Which leaves us with this final, critical thought to take away. As Amazon successfully attempts to build the invisible AI backbone of the entire global economy through these massive capital investments, will the compounding weight of these strict regulatory trials and nationwide labor tensions finally slow the flywheel? Will the immovable object of government and labor ultimately usher the trillion-dollar giant into Day 2? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and definitely keep these questions in mind as we watch this incredible story unfold.